Welcome, my name is Lauren from Zestful Kitchen, and welcome to Everyday Gourmet, where I'm going to be sharing realistic recipes for the avid home cook using global flavors and fresh ingredients. I gotta take my socks off, I'm getting hot. So today we're making my ground beef bulgogi, and what I love about this recipe is it's a great way to experience the traditional flavors of Korean barbecue, but in a fraction of the time. No long marinade time, but still all of those sweet, spicy, salty flavors. I will be sharing some traditional recipes in the caption below, so you can check those out, but today we're gonna be making a quicker version of Korean bulgogi. So we're first gonna start with the things that go with the ground beef bulgogi. These are optional. You can just skip right to the ground beef if you want that just to serve with rice. But we're gonna start making those really easy, quick pickled cucumbers. And the brine is really simple. It's just rice vinegar. You can use white vinegar, you can use white wine vinegar, but I like rice vinegar because it really fits with the other flavors. And then I'm sweetening it with honey. You can also do sugar, and then a little bit of salt and some water to cut all that acid. And then we're gonna use English cucumbers for this. You can use Persian cucumbers if you want, or regular cucumbers. I would just recommend peeling the skin because they're a little bit tough. So we're gonna start by slicing these. You can do it thinly sliced. You can make them into ribbons, which is what I'm gonna do today. You can use a vegetable peeler for that, but I'm using my favorite piece of equipment in my kitchen, which is this Zwilling 4-in-1 grater. It's amazing. So there's a slicer, there's a couple different graters. I use this thing every day. Anyway, so we're gonna thinly slice the cucumbers, and I like to go the long way because I think ribbons are really pretty with this. You can also, of course, just go sideways and have coins. And again, you can use a vegetable peeler for this if you want. You do not have to use a mandolin. So now that we have our cucumbers all thinly sliced, I'm going to make the brine really quick. So we have 3/4 cup of vinegar that I'm just gonna put in my bowl. And then I have some honey. Again, you can use sugar if you want. You can also use maple syrup or agave, but I like honey. Okay, and then I'm gonna grab 1/2 cup of water. Ish, you can eyeball it. So I'm gonna throw that in, and then we need a little bit of salt. Okay, and whisk that together just until the honey is dissolved. All right. So I usually am pretty stingy with my brine because rice vinegar is not the cheapest thing in the world. So you're gonna wanna toss it and continue to toss it occasionally as you cook everything else so that it gets pickled nicely. If you don't wanna do that, you can just double the brine and then save the brine for pickling other things. I just don't love throwing vinegar down the drain. So those are done. We're gonna set these aside, and we're gonna move on to the carrots. We're going to cook the carrots. I like to use 2 10-ounce bags of shredded carrots. It's a great shortcut, cuts down a ton of prep time. You can shred your own carrots, but I like these because they are still sturdy enough and hold up well to the high heat. So I'm gonna start by heating the skillet over medium-high. We'll see if it'll heat. And then I'm gonna add a tablespoon of high heat cooking oil, something like avocado oil. You can also do a vegetable oil. So we're gonna let that heat until it comes to a shimmer. Essentially what that means is that the oil is gonna kind of dance along the hot skillet. So you're gonna wanna keep an eye on it. All right, it's a lot of carrots, but it will cook down. And especially once we add some salt, that'll draw out some of the moisture from the carrots. So add a good amount of salt, and then we're going to stir it so they all get a little bit of oil on them. All right, so once we get them all stirred around, we're gonna put them in an even layer and let them cook without touching them at all for a few minutes until they start to brown on the bottom. And then we'll kind of continue to stir them and cook them until everything is nicely charred and softened. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna prep the aromatics that cook down with the ground beef. So we're gonna start with some onion. We're gonna grate it, which this is traditional. Usually in the marinade for bulgogi, there is grated pear or grated onion, or both. Helps with flavor, but it also helps to tenderize the meat. We're not as much looking for tenderization here, but we're looking for the flavor to really melt into that ground beef. So by grating this, we're gonna do that. It's just melts a little bit better than diced or minced. So with bulgogi, it's all about having a lot of bold aromatics, onion, garlic, ginger. But if you do not love the flavor of garlic, if it's a little too potent, you can slice your garlic instead or chop it, but I'm going to mince it. And for a quick weeknight prep, I'm gonna use a garlic press. If you don't have a garlic press, you can obviously just do it by hand. How much do I need? Heaping tablespoon. Okay, so we're just gonna add the garlic to the bowl with the onions because they're all going into the same pot eventually. And then we're gonna grate our ginger. I don't generally peel my ginger as thoroughly as a lot of people do because your microplane will do a good job of getting the paper or the exterior of it out. And if a little bit of it gets in there, it's not that big of a deal. So we're looking for 4 teaspoons of grated ginger. As a shortcut, you can use those like pastes that they sell in squeeze bottles, but I think you're gonna wanna probably use a little bit less of that. Tired. All right, so now that we have our ginger, we're also gonna add that to the onions and garlic. And then we're gonna move on to cooking the beef. Let's start with the beef. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna start by heating up some olive oil in a skillet over medium to medium high. And then we're gonna add in our aromatics and season them with a little bit of black pepper. All right. It's just slightly warm enough. You don't want the garlic or the ginger or the onions to burn right away, so you want it to still be not like scorching hot. So we're gonna add these in. Basically what we're doing here is we're gonna unlock the flavors of these aromatics. We don't necessarily wanna brown them because this is basically our quick version of a marinade. So you want to basically sweat these flavors out instead of browning them. So we'll let those cook, and then we're gonna add in some black pepper so that can get toasted. And this just adds another layer of spice because we're gonna add gochujang, which adds a nice spiciness. All right, now we're cooking, that's good. So it's starting to kind of become a paste, which is what you're looking for. Again, it's not browning, which is good. So we're gonna add 2 pounds of ground beef. I like to use something around the area of 90% fat, and this adds flavor, but not too much fat that it becomes greasy. We are gonna drain it, so if you have something a little fattier, that's fine. But I like the beefiness of 90%. It's a lot of ground beef. This recipe is a really good example too of something that you could easily half if you're not serving as many people. It's also a good recipe that you make, if you make a full batch, you can freeze half of it for later. The goal here is that it becomes really finely broken up, almost like sloppy Joe level ground up. You don't want big chunks because the goal here is when we add our sauce, that the sauce gets into all those little nooks and crannies of the ground beef. If you have a big chunk of ground beef, you're not gonna get all that flavor in there and all of that sauce in there. So you do want this to be pretty finely broken down. So you could use one of those like 4-pronged meat mashers. I just don't have one of those. Okay. I'm just gonna let her cook for a little bit. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna give the carrots one more stir and then we'll drain the beef. Oh yeah. All right, so let's turn this off. We're just gonna drain it. I have a sieve inside a bowl. Oh, I swear I have a. And I'm just gonna drain. All right. So essentially what we're doing is we're just draining off any of the excess liquid because we want this to be really saucy, not watery. We want the sauce to be nice and thick and coat the beef nicely instead of just like running off of the beef because there's too much water in it. A lot of liquid came off, and a lot of this is gonna be obviously grease from the beef, but also a lot of moisture from the onion. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add in all of our flavors that make this very Korean. So we're gonna add in some sugar. I'm using honey. Again, you could just use brown sugar. That's gonna be just as delicious. So I have 4 tablespoons of honey here. I give a range in the recipe because this type of recipe is very much to your preference. If you're worried it's gonna be a little bit too much, I would start with the lower end of the measurements. I'd start with 3 tablespoons of soy sauce, 3 tablespoons of honey, but I like a 1/4 cup of everything. So I'm adding in a 1/4 cup of soy sauce. And I use low sodium soy sauce. If you're using regular soy sauce, I would start with 2 tablespoons and then season to taste. And if you're making this gluten-free, you're gonna wanna use tamari. And if you're using tamari, it's a lot saltier than low sodium soy sauce. So I'd also recommend using 2 tablespoons of that and just starting there and then seasoning to taste. And again, if you're gonna be making it gluten-free, make sure your gochujang is gluten-free. Most is not. So you're gonna wanna double check that. So what we're gonna be adding is some gochujang, which is a fermented red chili paste. I add 3 tablespoons of gochujang. This is gonna be the spice that is added to the dish. So if you're worried about heat level, I'd start with 2 tablespoons, but I like 3. This also adds a little bit more sweetness as well. Let's smell this. Okay, so then we're gonna add 2 tablespoons of mirin. You can also use rice wine. This is essentially just sweetened sake. So rice wine is gonna be sweetened wine. So we're gonna add in 2 tablespoons of our mirin. And then we're gonna mix it all up and bring it back to a simmer. I am slightly concerned about my carrots. I should stir those. I just remembered them. They might be a little burnt. Oh, they're fine. They're a little burnt. Turn her down a little bit. They are certainly charred. Okay. We're gonna bring this back to the stovetop. So essentially all we need to do here is bring the mixture kind of up to a bubble so it thickens a little bit. You want that sauce to get nice and thick, and then it's done. There are a ton of ways that you can serve this. I personally like to serve it over rice with a little bit of bib lettuce. Any of this can be made ahead of time. The cucumbers can be pickled, the carrots can be cooked, the ground beef can be cooked. So this is a great make ahead dish, and it stores really well. So, all right, these carrots look really good. So you really do want them to get kind of charred. I was worried they got burnt, but they look really good. I just put a little bit of these in the bowl. Oh my gosh, it's already so pretty. Okay. I mean, green and orange, they just go so well together. Let's actually put some cucumbers in first so we can snuggle the beef on top. I don't know if that's correct terminology. I just like ribbon them in there. Oh, they're so pretty. Okay. I mean, look at how gorgeous. Okay, then I'm gonna put in some of our beef, and you wanna make sure you get some of those juices in the bottom. Good. All right, maybe just a little bit more. Oh. Then I'm gonna sprinkle some scallions over top. And a little bit of sesame seeds. And then you can finish it with some kimchi, some spicy bits. I mean, this is an all-in-one dish. Okay, yum. That looks so good. And that is your ground beef bulgogi. Okay, I have to taste this. It looks so delicious. I'm gonna get a little bit of carrots and rice, and obviously the beef. It's a great dinner. So much flavor, so much texture. I shouldn't be talking with my mouth open. This dish is so flavorful. It's savory, it's sweet, it's fresh, but it's also really cozy and satisfying. I hope you enjoy this recipe. You can find the full recipe on my website, zestfulkitchen.com. The link and everything is below. I'll see you right back here next week for another everyday gourmet recipe. And I hope you subscribe for more everyday gourmet. I don't know what to say. How do I finish this recipe?